All right, guys, it's finally here. I bought and tested all of the best sunrise alarm clocks on the market, and in this video, I'm going to compare all of the data as well as my experience using each of these so that you'll know which one is right for you. So which lamps did I test? We got all 4 of the Lumi body clocks, the Hatch Restore 2 and 3, all 3 of the Philips Smart Sleep lamps, the new Philips Hue Twilight, the Casper Glow, the Lofty lamp, and some popular budget models from Amazon. For all of these lamps, I'm going to test total brightness or lumens, lux output, sunrise settings like brightness levels, curves, and durations, and lux output. We'll also discuss features like alarm scheduling, ease of use, white noise, and more. At the end, I'm going to give you my personal recommendations as well as some footage of what these sunrises look like in a dark room. If you'd like to dive deeper into any of the lamps we talk about in this video, I've done full reviews of all of them and you'll find those below. And since this review is going to be a little bit long and detailed, feel free to skip using the chapters below to the parts that interest you the most. All right, let's jump right into the first question I know everyone is asking, and that is which sunrise alarm clock is the brightest? To test this, I put each lamp inside of our integration sphere and measured its total brightness in lumens using our lab grade spectrometer. Here are the results from that test. The first thing you'll notice is that 2 lamps stand out from the pack. The Lumi Shine 300 at 550 lumens and the Philips Hue Twilight at 570 lumens. I was surprised that the Shine 300 was so much brighter than its counterparts, the 150, and even brighter than the more expensive 700 model. You'll also see that the popular Philips Smart Sleep lamps are ranking right in the middle. I bought quite a few of the best-selling Amazon sunrise clocks, and almost all of these sucked. I kept 3 of them in this test, and the JALL was by far the brightest of those. Lastly, the Lofty lamp as well as the Hatch 2 and 3 are dimmer overall than the Casper Glow. So that's total brightness, but that's not the whole picture. While lumens tell you roughly how much total light a lamp is putting into your bedroom, for dosing and practical applications, we want to measure how much light is actually hitting your eye, and to do that, we need to measure lux. To test this, I placed each lamp in front of our spectrometer and measured every 6 inches on every brightness setting. Let's see how the lamps stack up now, looking at lux at 1 foot. Quite a bit has changed. The Hatch Restore 2 has jumped way up the ranks, but so has the Restore 3, which is actually about 30% brighter than its predecessor, coming in at 4th place. And the Philips Smart Sleep lamps have pushed all the Lumi clocks down the rankings, except for the Shine 300, which retains its position with the Hue Twilight. So even though the Lumi lamps have a higher lumen output, the Philips Smart Sleep lamps have a higher lux output due to their design. And looking back at our graph, you'll see that the Lofty lamp and the Casper Glow have dropped to last place, and this is because they project their light in all directions and aren't super bright to begin with. Now, what can you do with this information? Is it best to buy the brightest lamp? I have an article and video that I can link to where we dive a little deeper on the science behind sunrise simulation. It seems like the ideal starting point is 250 lux. From there, if you're waking up too fast, you'd want to decrease the brightness and or increase the duration of the sunrise, which would make it a bit more gentle. If you're not waking up fast enough, you'd want to increase the brightness and or decrease the duration of the sunrise. To achieve 250 lux, however, you need 2 things: a sufficiently bright lamp and enough brightness settings to hone in on the right lux level. On average, you'll probably be about 18 inches from your sunrise clock, and some lamps don't even come close to hitting 250 lux at this level, like the Casper Glow or the Lofty lamp. But which ones do? Here we see that all 3 of the Philips Smart Sleep lamps do: the JALL, the Hatch Restore 3, the Lumi Shine 300, and the Hue Twilight. All 7 of these offer sufficient max brightness and enough brightness settings to fine-tune them. In the article for this video linked below, there are lux distance charts you can use for each of these lamps to fine-tune them. Essentially how these work is the darker squares indicate a higher chance of early or delayed awakening. Now, to be clear, you don't have to buy one of these super bright lamps. If you find yourself very sensitive to bright light in the morning, one of the dimmer ones might work just fine for you. Since we're on the topic of how to use these, it's worth pointing out that many of these lamps vary in their sunrise durations. Here's how they compare. You'll see that the Lux 700 and 300 are the only lamps that allow you to set up to 90-minute sunrises, which is interesting because many of the studies used 90-minute durations. The JALL, Hatch Restore, and Hue Twilight can all go up to 60 minutes, while the 3520, 3650, and Glow 150 all cap at around 40 minutes. The rest are limited to fixed 30 and 9-minute sunrises. So if you want to experiment with sunrise timing, the Lumi 700 and 300 are probably your best choice. Now let's talk about sunrise curves. A sunrise alarm clock should mimic the brightness curve of a real sunrise, which starts very gradually and increases logarithmically over time. The Hue Twilight is a great example of this. A curve like this ensures a very gradual wake up, which is exactly what we want. Looking at the 3 Philips Smart Sleep lamps, we see a very similar curve, so these pass. Looking at the Lumi body clocks, these aren't quite as gradual, but they're still very good. The Casper Glow has a pretty decent curve too. But now let's look at the not so good ones, Lofty being a great example. These are all very gradual and then get suddenly much brighter at the end. Perhaps the reason for this is so that it ensures that you wake up when paired with the 2-phase alarm that the Lofty clock uses. I'm not sure, but it's definitely not ideal from a gradual wake up perspective. Looking at the sunrises from the Hatch Restore 2 and 3, these are also kind of all over the place. However, Morning and Prague in particular does have a pretty decent sunrise curve. The last ones to touch on are the Amazon lamps. Of these, the Reacher and the JALL have pretty good curves. However, the JALL is much brighter. All right, it's time to move on to flicker testing. As AC power is converted to DC power with LEDs, it can introduce some invisible flicker that seems to bother some people, so we check this using our lab grade flicker meter. I measured all the lamps at 100% and 50% brightness, since many of them function just fine until you dim them. Using the IEEE 1789 flicker risk standard, here are the lamps that made it into our no risk category. You'll see some high frequency flicker waveforms here, but since these are so high frequency, they're deemed safe. It's really the low frequency stuff that we worry about. When dimmed to 50%, many of these waveforms get a bit more dramatic, especially the Hue Twilight, and the Casper Glow in particular starts to get some 120 Hz flicker spikes that take it from the no risk category to the low risk category. Now 4 lamps made it into our high risk category. Here are their waveforms. As you can see, the Philips 3650, 3520, and the Lumi 700 are cycling at 120 Hz, 100% depth, meaning they are turning on and off completely 120 times per second. The Shine 300 is actually flicker free at 100% brightness, but as soon as we dim these, it joins in on the 120 Hz flicker, just like all the rest. The takeaway here is to avoid these if flicker is a concern of yours. So that's it for testing. Now it's time to go over features, starting with ease of use. By far the most annoying one to use was the Philips 3650. It has a lot of options and customizations, which is nice, except the entire menu system is nested in icons only. All of these icons mean something, but while navigating the menu, I constantly forgot or didn't know what an icon meant, and so I would refer back to the manual, but if you take too long, it boots you back to the main screen, which was very annoying. You won't use the menu much past the initial setup, so once that's over with, it's fine, but this is not a sunrise alarm clock that you buy for your grandma. While not quite as bad as the 3650, I found the Lumi Shine 300 a little confusing to use at first too. There's just a lot of buttons and arrows, and trying to figure out which one controls what was a little difficult at first. Unfortunately, both of these are some of the best sunrise alarm clocks I tested, so you may want to buy one. Just be aware that the initial usage experience could be a little frustrating. Now, I recommend not using an audible alarm with a sunrise alarm clock. The whole objective here, after all, is to wake up naturally without an alarm. However, if you're dead set on it, let's go over which ones offer the best audible alarms. The Lumi body clocks and the Philips Smart Sleep lamps both offer nature-based alarms that I liked. However, the Lumi 100 and the Philips 3500 only offer a single beeping alarm. A warning about the 3500, however, you cannot turn off the audible alarm on this clock, which is one reason I don't recommend it. Now, the Lofty lamp, Hue Twilight, and Casper Glow don't offer any audio output at all. However, the Lofty lamp can be paired with the Lofty clock, and you can use kind of its 2-phase alarm system that way. If you're curious about that, I did a review on it here. Lastly, I'd have to say that the Hatch Restore has by far the best audible alarms of the bunch. They sound great, and the speaker is forward-facing, unlike all of the other alarms here, which face the back, so it also tends to be quite a bit louder at its max setting. Next up is alarm scheduling. I recommend waking up at the same time every morning if you can, but if you need scheduling of some kind, only a few of the traditional clocks let you do this. The most versatile of the lamps are the smart ones, like the Casper Glow, the Hatch Restore, the Hue Twilight, and the Lofty. With these, you can set basically an infinite number of alarms and turn them off and on very easily. So if you're a firefighter or a doctor or someone with rotating shifts of some kind, one of these might be the best option. Just under that is the Lumi 700 and 300 that allow you to set a separate alarm for each day of the week. Now the Lumi 100 and 150 as well as the Philips 3500 only let you set one alarm, which is fine with me. I only ever use one. However, it's very worth mentioning that the Lumi 100 and 150 have to be re-enabled every morning for them to go off again. Meaning your alarm goes off in the morning, you have to hit a button to re-enable that alarm or it will not go off, which is incredibly stupid. I don't know why it doesn't just repeat. Now, if you want just a little bit more versatility, the Philips 3650 and 3520 allow you to set two alarms. So kind of like a classic weekday, weekend thing. However, again, you should be waking up at the same time every day. Next is 12 and 24-hour time. This is a small thing, but worth touching on. With each of these clocks, you can switch between 12 and 24-hour time, except the Lumi body clocks. These are stuck in 24-hour time only with no option for 12-hour time. Because this is a European company, they don't care about that. So if you're kind of like a diehard 12-hour time person, something to be aware of. If you like a pitch black room to sleep in, you'll want a clock face that can be turned off completely at night. Luckily, every clock in this list can do that, except the Philips 3500. Now, it does get very dim, however, it doesn't turn off completely, and it also doesn't auto dim like many of the others, so you have to turn it down at night and up during the day if you want to see it, which can be kind of annoying. Worth mentioning that the JALL also doesn't auto dim. You can turn it completely off, but there is no auto dimming feature. All right, let's talk about sunset modes. Basically, this is when you can set the clock to slowly fade from like a warm orange to off. All of the lamps do this except the 3500. I don't use these features myself as they tend to be a little convoluted most of the time. However, some lamps like the Philips 3650 have a nice, easy to use tap to wake nightlight feature that I did find myself using. Other than that, I'm mostly just here for the sunrise. The last thing we'll touch on before I give you my recommendations is white noise. The Lumi 150, 300, and 700 all offer a basic white noise audio file, so if you like to use white noise, pick one of those. For the best white noise experience, however, you're going to want to go with the Hatch Restore, which has a ton of white noise options to choose from in the free version of its app. And there are recordings of all of these in that article linked below. So which one of these should you buy? Well, my favorite overall pick is the Lumi Body Clock Shine 300 for several reasons. For one, it's the brightest traditional sunrise alarm clock I tested, and with 20 brightness settings and up to 90-minute sunrise durations, it's also one of the most versatile ones. The Shine also has an auto-dimming clock face that turns off completely in a dark room, and it has a nightlight and sunset feature as well. And for $160, it's also a pretty reasonably priced option. The Shine does suffer a little bit from a slightly cumbersome interface, but it's not that bad once you get used to it. There's also some 200 Hz flicker once it's dimmed. This isn't a concern for me personally, but it might be for you. Here's a quick 10-second time lapse of the Shine 300 in a dark room to give you an idea of what the sunrise looks like. Now, an alternative to the Shine 300 could be the Philips 3650, which is just behind it in total brightness. One of the things that may sway you is that it has 12-hour time. So if you're an American and you just can't stand 24-hour time, maybe go with that one. Some features, like the tap to wake dim orange nightlight, are much more user-friendly, and I found myself using this very often. The alarm sounds are also quite a bit nicer on the 3650 than the Shine 300, and it does also have that auto-off clock face for a dark room. The menu system can be a little cumbersome. This one does flicker as well though, so something to keep in mind. Here is a 10-second time lapse of the Philips HF 3650 in a dark room. One interesting thing that stands out with the 3650 is that it has a backup alarm. If you lose power, the backup alarm will last for 8 hours, and if your alarm time is due during that period, it will beep for 30 seconds. So if you have power outages often where you are, or you have kind of like an alarm anxiety, maybe this is something that you would like to have, but no other clocks have this. Now with just $40, my budget pick goes to the JALL. This was surprisingly bright and has quite a few features for the price. With a sunrise duration of 5 to 60 minutes and 20 brightness settings, the JALL is also very easy to dial in. Here's our 10-second time lapse of the JALL in a dark room. One thing to keep in mind with the JALL is that there is no auto off clock face, so you have to manually turn off the clock face each night if you want a black room. The 3500 from Philips is similarly priced and similarly effective, but you can't turn off the audible alarm on that one, so I don't like it. Now, my favorite smart sunrise alarm clock was the Hatch Restore 3. I loved using this thing. It has 5 to 60 minute sunrise durations and limitless brightness settings, so it's pretty easy to dial in as well. This is also the best flicker option. There's basically no flicker at all here, so it's a good choice if flicker's a concern. What makes the Restore so smart is its highly personalized routine building app. This allows you to create these step-by-step bedtime routines that can play podcast snippets, short stories, music, meditations, all kinds of stuff. There's a ton of options here. The routine stuff will run you $5 a month, so it's not for everybody, but I was highly impressed with the app, and if a more structured nighttime routine sounds useful to you, you might want to give this a shot. When you buy the Restore, you get 30 days free of the routine features, and even after that runs out, the sunrise alarm, as well as all the white noise, is free to use forever, and that far surpasses many of the other lamps here, so it's not that bad. Here is a 10-second time lapse of the Restore in a dark room, and if you'd like to know more about it, there's a video and article review that you can check out. The last sunrise alarm I could recommend is the Hue Twilight. It's the brightest sunrise alarm I tested, but also exceedingly more expensive than every other option at $280 retail. It's also not a traditional clock by any means. It doesn't have a clock face and it doesn't have any audio output. But what the Sunrise does offer is a very unique sunrise effect. Unlike all the others, it starts with a dim blue light like a real sunrise before shifting to a warmer 2000 Kelvin and then back up to a 2700 Kelvin light. It also projects its light down instead of just out, which has potentially some benefits. For one, it's probably less likely to bother your sleeping partner, and it might have a better chance of reaching the other side of your face if you're facing the opposite direction, which can be a problem with a lot of these sunrise alarm clocks. The Twilight also has some scenes that you can select from for late night reading or relaxing, and it also has a sunset automation mode as well. Overall, it is an odd, rather expensive lamp, but the sunrise is top notch. All right, that ends my recommendations. If this was useful, please give this video a like. I'd really appreciate that. And if you guys have any questions, just ask them down below and I will answer. All right, see you guys next time.